Hey everyone, Shane here with etrailer.com. Today I have a 2004 Polaris Sportsman ATV. And I want to walk through how to install the etrailer.com 2,500 pound winch. Now if you've had an ATV before without a winch, or ATV is something new to you, adding a winch on is going to save you a lot of trouble when trying to do a lot of different things. For instance, if you're a hunter, I've had situations where I've been out hunting on my in-laws property. They don't have a winch. Trails only go so far. Well, what if the deer falls, down in the woods? Now you have to get 3 or 4 people to drag the deer up to where you are. If you had a winch, you can stretch it out and you don't have to use all that muscle and energy trying to get that deer out of the woods. Maybe you like to go four-wheeling, go out riding with a bunch of friends. Maybe you get stuck in the mud somewhere. Pull this out, wrap it around a tree, and you can pull yourself out of the mud without having to rely on somebody else to pull you out. Maybe you want to pull a friend out. This is a way to not only pull yourself, but help the friend pull themselves out. This is what our winch looks like when it's installed. It's going to fit right in this area on your ATV. It's going to come with a bracket to mount the winch to the plate, and then mount your Fairlead to the plate. However, depending on how your bike is set up, it may require an additional bracket. You can find those here at eTrailer. It's going to come with a polished aluminum Fairlead because it is a synthetic rope. It's going to have rolled edges or smooth edges so that it doesn't snag the rope itself. The casing for the motor is going to be a very durable casing. It's going to keep dust, dirt, debris, and some strong water spray from getting into the motor causing any damage. This is a free spool design. Right over here on this side, there's a little lever, and it allows you to pull your rope out by hand. So let's say our bike breaks down, but we still have battery powered where we can use our winch. You pull that lever, and it allows you to pull this rope out, wrap it around whatever you need to wrap it around to get yourself out of the hole. Another nice thing about it is it has a brake in it. So what that means is, again, let's say we're broke down but we still have battery power. We go to wrap it around a tree and we release the brake on the bike itself. The winch has a brake in it, so it won't allow the bike or the spool to release or to allow the bike to roll down a hill. It'll hold it in place. Keep in mind, if you want it to lock, you have to make sure if you have it on free spool, you lock the free spool back into place. To release a free spool, you simply pull out and twist. A rope is going to have a nice cover on it, so when we go to wrap it around a tree or something like that, we don't have to worry about the rope getting damaged. And as I mentioned, this is 50 foot long, so we have plenty of rope to reach where we need to go. One thing to keep in mind, when you unroll it, if you're rolling it all the way, make sure it has 1 or 2 turns around the wheel so it has a good tight hold. When you have your line rope tight, it's a good idea to add on a line brake. And this is with any winch or any rope that whether it's wire or rope, so that if you're on the bike and you're pulling yourself up, if that line breaks for any reason, it doesn't come back and hit you. This is also going to come with a switch. It's going to have a durable plastic housing. We're not going to have to worry about water or anything getting in there, damaging the electrical components. The switch itself is going to have a nice rubber coating on it. So again, we don't have to worry about water or anything. If our hands are wet pushing the button, we don't have to worry about water getting in there. It's also going to come with a bracket, so we pretty much universal. We can mount it anywhere on our handlebars. Now it's a good idea when you're rolling it back in, keep the line taut. Have a pair of gloves on so you can hold on to the rope, doesn't tear up your hands. It's going to be a 1 horsepower motor. It's going to work with 12 volt DC batteries. It's going to have 135 amps of draw at 2,500 pounds of line pull. It's going to be a planetary design. It's single stage planetary, which is different than your wormhole, your typical wormhole. Wormhole is basically a bolt that goes through, it's got a crank on it, and when your motor kicks in, that crank grabs on, and it allows you to pull use the winch. Being a single stage planetary, it's going to have a crank, but it's going to have several little ones inside, so that when that motor kicks in, it acts as a train, and it allows that motor to work that line much faster than a single wormhole. Now that we've gone over some of the features, let's walk you through how to get it installed. Before we get into the installation, I'm actually going to be removing an older winch. But what I want to show you is if you're just now putting a winch on, you haven't ever put one on, you're not replacing one. If you're trying to decide between a wired one and a synthetic one, this is what the wired ones do after a very short period of time. They start rusting like this, they start fraying. You can see a spot here where it's pinched, and that creates a weak spot in the cable. You can also see as this cable rubs on this Fairlead, what it does. This one barely spins anymore. So, in my opinion, I would go with a synthetic rope over the wired ones. Other than that, if you follow along, after I get this one taken off, we'll walk you through how to install the other one. We're going to start by taking this panel off. I'm going to take a T27 Torx bit. Yours may be set up a little bit different, but we need to get access to the inside of this as much as possible. So if yours is like this, you're going to have two here, you're going to have two down here in the corners. We'll just slide this panel off. Be careful if you're messing with the wired cable that you don't stick your fingers, wear gloves. Now we've gotten to the point where we've disconnected the old winch from the battery. We've taken off the back so we have access to the battery. It's just a matter of figuring out which bolts are holding your panels down. This panel here mounts right here on the driver's side, or on the left side of the bike towards the front, and they had their old box mounted right here. You can see it. That's what these two screws are for. The difference is the old one doesn't have this. So what I'm going to do is take these screws out. I'm going to mount this in there to see if it makes contact with anything. This is for the switch that mounts on the handlebars. This box has to be mounted close enough to the winch that these two leads will reach. So all I'm going to do is where the existing holes are, I'm going to go up just a little and a little bit towards this back edge. And that should get that to where it runs right through the center of that bracket. Now I've got my old winch out of the bracket. I'm just going to use this bracket again. It is going to come with a new plate. However, the bracket that we have, it's not going to work together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to put a fresh coat of paint on it. Kind of help reduce any more rusting as much as possible, and then we'll get our new winch put in place. Next, since we're using the old bracket, this is the new Fairlead for the Haas Fairlead for your synthetic rope. If you look, the holes don't line up. So what we're going to do, we're going to get it as even as possible, and we're going to make new holes for our new hardware. It's going to come with new hardware. You got an Allen head bolt, flat washer, lock washer, and a nut. Once you get a bolt on each side, we can install the winch. We're going to take our end, pass it through our Fairlead. We're going to line up these two holes on the bottom of our winch with the two holes in the bracket. Kit's going to come with new hardware. Get a longer bolt, put that in one, and then we'll file it up with a flat washer, lock washer, and a nut. Again, pass that through the winch and both brackets if you're using an existing one. Flat washer, lock washer, nut. reinstall our winch and our bracket back onto our bike. Again, we got 2 here and 2 on the other side. Now we're going to get our switch mounted. It's going to come with a handlebar bracket, and I think I'm going to mount it right here. There's a little plate that comes with it. This allows you to angle the switch the way you want. Basically sit pretty much however you want on your handlebars. You want to make sure when you put the clamp on, you're not going around any wires or anything like that. Right, come back, get that tightened, and adjust this up here however we want. So for my cable, what I'm going to do, took off a couple of screws and took this cap off. I'm going to pass this wire right down through here, and then I'm going to work it. There's some factory wiring that runs right down the center right through here. I'm going to get it to feed down through there. Zip tie on it. All I did was ran my wire straight over here, bundled it up, zip tied it to my factory wiring here, and to make sure when you're coming down, stay away from the steering arm that goes up to the handlebars, because it's going to turn right there. You want to make sure it's not going to get caught on anything between here and there. So what I did is I just found some factory tubing, anything like that up there, and ran it right along that. And this is where my box is going to be connected. So we'll be able to plug that right in. Got our power and ground. It needs to go back towards the battery. Our panel, and then our 2 short ones are going to hook up to our winch. Get this set in place. Let's see if we can't get the cable connected up onto the box. So my power and ground coming from my unit that has to go back to my battery. What I did is when I pulled out the old one, I just followed it. There's factory wiring that runs, you can see right here. I just ran it from where the unit's mounted and just followed it right along the same way when I pulled out the other one. You just want to make sure, if you're not taking an old one out, you just run it. I like to try to find factory wiring. Try to run it where you're staying away from anything hot or moving. So our ground is actually going to connect right here, which is right there. And then our power has to go to our breaker. Going to connect like this, and this is going to connect to the positive side of the battery. There's no way to mount this, so what we're going to do is I'm going to put it on here. I'm going to tape up this whole end, and then we'll kind of, you want to make sure no metal is going to touch the 2 prongs together, and then we'll just kind of get it to fit in to where we can get this mounted onto the positive side of the battery there. We're going to go ahead and get our cables hooked up to our winch before we hook up to our battery. It really doesn't matter how you do it, but rather than hooking up to the battery and potentially having these spark on something, we'll hook up to the winch first. It's going to come with a little rubber boot. Looks like that. It's going to help protect your ends here. Take off the nut, and then it's going to have 2 washers on it. We'll put 1 washer down, put our ring terminal on, put the other washer on top, and we'll take our 10mm wrench socket. We can tighten it up. Well, make sure you don't over tighten that. Push your boot over the top like that, and we'll do the same thing with the power cable. Now we can go ahead and hook up our power and ground. I actually covered the wire coming from my breaker with some wire loom as well. It's really up to you. Just trying to protect it as much as possible. Once we get that on, go ahead and test it out. Make sure it's working correctly. Now we know it's working, we can go ahead and reinstall our panels. Once you have all your panels put back in place, we're going to install the hook. You're going to pull the pin out, slide the pin through the ring, and then put your cotter pin back in place. The kit's going to come with a strap like this for your hook. Hook it on like that. Once you get your strap and your hook put on, you're ready to go. It's going to do it for a look at and installation on the etrailer.com 2,500 pound winch on the 2004 Polaris Sportsman ATV.